Good evening and welcome to the Greg Thompson Sports Show. We are going to be having a lot of fun tonight. Everybody's watching hockey and March Madness and all the goodness going on all around sports. But tonight we're going to be diving into what everyone is still talking about. Last week we brought you all kinds of goodness with the March Madness tips from the guys at the Action Network. They gave you the tip on watching out for Virginia and called that upset. They called a couple other fun things. Make sure you check out that show and our bracket contest. Got a ton of people in there with a lot of cool prizes. But this week, we know the NFL still dominates the calendar. The NFL still controls our sporting hearts. And tonight is no different as we dive into the first week of NFL free agency. And who better to help with that than our friends, Joe Marino and Brad Spielberger. Gentlemen, how we doing?
What's up, Greg? Good to be on with you, man. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So, Joe, I know you made an announcement this week as you the host of the Locked On Bills Network, but also bringing over a new show to Locked On that's going to touch on league-wide roster construction. Tell the folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, appreciate that, Greg. We took the Draft Dudes podcast, and now it is the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the Draft Dudes, Kyle Krabs and myself. We're daily Monday through Friday on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts where we talk about roster construction, team building, the thought process behind the decisions that your favorite team's general manager is making, life cycles, all that type of stuff. Appreciate the opportunity to share it and would love for anyone to check it out.
Absolutely. And Brad, I know so many people don't realize the amount of work that goes into what they've been using all week long, and they go to their PFF free agent rankings and all the contract projections out there. And so much of that is the hard work at your fingertips. How is your week gone as you see those weeks and weeks of projections and all of that come to fruition and seeing your spot on hits and some of your, head scratching misses? How is your week gone?
Yeah, it's been great. No, I appreciate it. It is a labor of love, but definitely gets tough at the end there. And yeah, you always learn from it. I'm never upset. It is what it is with the market. It feels good to be right, but also when you're wrong, you try to get better for the next year. It's been a weird free agency. Obviously, we're going to get into it, but it's just fun to finally see it play out after all that preparation for months. And the draft should be great in a couple of weeks as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, without further ado, let's go right into our first topic for tonight. We'll start with you, Brad. Just your initial thoughts on this first wave of free agency, some of the positions that we've seen some significant splurges, some that have been really slowly developing. What were some of your initial thoughts?
The biggest thing is we are seeing the pending market explosion for interior defensive linemen, and it's going to continue. And I think the market you saw is because of what's going to happen with guys like Jeffrey Simmons and Dexter Lawrence and Quinnen Williams in the 2019 draft class. The reason why Javon Hargrave at 30 years old, look, phenomenal player, but at 30 years old is getting a 4-year, $84 million contract. The reason why Draymond Jones, good player, but getting over $17 million a year. Zach Allen, an above-average player, maybe a good player, getting over $15 million a year is because those dudes I just mentioned are probably about to get like $25 million a year. And I think that is the indicator you're seeing is why these deals are so strong, is they know where the market is about to be. I think it's pretty fascinating to see that kind of play out in real time, though.
Bill, how about you just, watching it? Obviously, fans familiar with the Buffalo Bills know you're hyper focus on that area, but obviously you're, a football fanatic and seeing everything going on across the league. How was that lens as you were analyzing it to be able to produce your show each day, but watching some of these other deals come flying by?
Generally speaking, it was pretty slow. And I think we understood that it wasn't a super deep crop of free agents. And while there was still plenty of movement, right? Players went to different teams and were big deals signed. I just didn't feel like we had the volume like we've had in other years, especially at certain positions. It was just really lacking some of those premier names, whether that was edge rusher or even wide receiver to an extent. Tight end was kind of a weak group. We didn't really have any big-time corners. So I felt like in general, there's a lot of exchanges, a lot of good bargain signings. There's certainly some teams that I feel were winners, but collectively, I think it was a weak crop. and it really slowed down quick. You know what I mean? We got all excited for this to start on Monday, and then it just was been like a slow burn all week.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see all the different assumptions and preparation, and you expect kind of those huge swings when everybody knows the majority of the value and the things we look back on favorably are the teams that waited, the guys who signed later, the interesting value deals. And we get into some of those. For everybody listening here, you guys know how this works. We have a new show. We're just getting started. The best way for you to help us out and to show other people about what's going on is to hit that like button, help us out, share what's going on here, like, subscribe, rate, and review, all the stuff that you normally hear. But simply with the algorithm, the easiest thing for you to do is send us a comment, let us know what you're thinking about, and hit that like button. It really helps us out. Make sure you're jumping into it. So, Joe, let's start with you on this one. When we look team-wide and we're looking at, hey, which teams do you see as the winner for week one? What was the team that really jumped out to you?
Yeah, I keep trying to find a different answer, but I keep coming back to the same team. It's the Cleveland Browns. And maybe that's a team that surprises some people, but when I consider what's important to me with winning free agency, it's about value and fitting needs and not overspending and those types of things. And so I think the Cleveland Browns did a phenomenal job with that. I've been very concerned about this defensive line, very concerned. I mean, Myles Garrett, 16 sacks last year. The guy after that was Taven Bryan with 3, Deion Jones, 2.5. I mean, everybody was running the football all over the Cleveland Browns all year. So it wasn't just pass rush. These guys couldn't stop anyone that was running on them, and they got some smaller linebackers that got exposed. I love what they did. Dalvin Tomlinson, 4 years, $52 million. Brad just got done talking about the spike in defensive tackle in terms of where that market's going to go. And so while 4 years, 52 is a nice chunk of change, I think it's a pretty good value, especially given the need. They need that one tech. And over the last 3 years, Dalvin's really kicked up his pass rush ability as well. So I like that deal. I love Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, the defensive end. I think he's an ascending player at a premium position, 3 years, $19 million. Really liked what he did last year in Houston and the previous year with the Rams. I thought those were good value deals at big-time positions of need. And then how about Juan Thornhill just coming through? 3 years, $21 million. You want to run split zone safety coverage is cover too. I mean, Juan Thornhill is tremendous at that. Good ball skills, can play some man coverage. I think he's been a reliable player for the Chiefs. And then re-signing Ethan Pocic, their center, who really emerged, was kind of an ascending player in Seattle, comes to the Browns, winds up being a really good center for them. 3 years, $18 million. I'm in love with everything that they've done. I think they've addressed needs with good value, made a good re-signing in Pocic. And I'm not going to sit here and say that other teams didn't give or find more talent. I just like the way that the Cleveland Browns went about their business with value and addressing their needs.
I think that's a great one. Obviously I know it's hard not to touch on some of the teams like Houston or Chicago because they had such a blank slate and such a huge, wallet to be able to go spend. I don't mind the way they went about it. I like some of the names that Houston added. And I actually, it kind of, touches my heart. I'm glad to see that DeMeco Ryans has some of that juice that players want to go play for him. I like some of the names that they added, but I don't know that they got any, game changers. I won't lie. There were multiple players that I scouted specifically for the Bills that the Bears kept hitting on. That I was interested in Andrew Billings. I was interested in Deontay Foreman. Obviously taking Tremaine Edmonds and one of the backup plans being TJ Edwards, and they get both of them. Nate Davis was a guard that I know you liked as well, Joe. So a lot of players there that were interesting to see, but it's. One of our guys, Chris Chouse, who does our fantasy show, said that, it's easy to love the Bears going from like the ground floor to the sixth floor, but this is a 20-story building. So you still got a lot further to go. But hey, God bless them. They did go out and add genuine talent. And then you combine that with the trade for DJ Moore and the haul they got for the number 1 pick. You got to respect what Ryan Poles has done there. Brad, how about you?
Oh, yeah. So, I think Cleveland Browns is a great answer. Probably took that one right from me. I'm with you where it's, look, you can't talk with the teams that made the big splashes. We always probably fall in love with those teams, but winning in March doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to win come September. So, like, 2 other teams that did well in the mid-tier range. I'll stay one in the AFC North. Look, Orlando Brown, I think the narrative on him is all over the place. Is he an elite left tackle? No. Is he worth basically $50 million over 3 years, which is essentially what his contract is. Yes, I mean, he is a good player. And yes, I know now you get the trade request from Jonah Williams, who's been solid, when healthy, obviously the kneecap last year and has had various injuries. But you bring him in, you retain, or you lose both safeties, but you bring in Nick Scott, a good free safety that I think played well last year in Los Angeles, can come down and play against the run and lay some big hits, but also is kind of a good, deep third free safety when you need him to be. So didn't get much worse. I think maybe the best value signing the entire offseason in Orlando Brown. And then one other one I'll just throw out there is the Detroit Lions. I mean, again, address your biggest weakness without breaking the bank. You mentioned it's not a great cornerback class, but I love bringing Emmanuel Mosley on a 1-year flyer. Gets hurt last year. I thought was playing really good football before he got injured. Bring him in on a 1-year, I think it's $6 million flyer. And then, kind of a big splash on Cam Sutton, but 3 years, $33 million. Just they needed to address that secondary, particularly the outside corners. Cam Sutton has the inside-outside flexibility, maybe plays inside and nickel, goes outside in base. I just think it was, you bring back Isaiah Buggs and John Kaminsky and solidify that interior. Nothing flashy, but I think they focused on that offense and they got better, maybe considerably better on the back end.
I like that a lot. And I think that this next topic, looking at the biggest team losers, I won't lie, this is the hardest one for me as I dug through trying to find anything obvious. And, the Ravens never play in free agency. So is it shocking to see them kind of sit it out with their Lamar situation? I guess they haven't added anyone, but it's not shocking they don't ever play in this part of free agency. The Eagles, we know they had a ton of pending talent coming up because they invested so much in that Super Bowl run. So can I get mad when they still retain, Fletcher Cox and, Slay and Bradbury and so many good guys? And yeah, they also lost a handful of guys. I won't lie. I probably would have picked the Chiefs, but even then going into today, you hit and add Drew Tranquill, you add Mike Edwards. I actually thought that Charles Omenihu was a decent signing. So I don't know that I loved paying Jawan Taylor $20 million when Orlando Brown got a good chunk less than that, and you lose Juju and Wiley and Thornhill and Frank Clark and those guys. But I kind of struggled to find a real obvious loser here. Joe, who was someone that stood out to you?
Oh, I didn't have any trouble, Greg. I think the Las Vegas Raiders have done a terrible job. See me, Brad. I'm glad I'm going first, my guys. Feel like I'm taking your answers. Wow, the Raiders. You're not a good football team. You're in a division that has Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, in a conference that has Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and other really good teams, and you're really, really far behind. Somehow you got worse at quarterback. You decided to move on from Derek Carr, didn't get anything for him. And you bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, which I think is a downgrade at the position for the sake of what? Scheme, because that's the Patriot way, because they don't have a big enough Rolodex of people that they can call, whether it's coaches or players, to come in and do their thing. So you have to continue to settle for the same recycled players across different regimes wherever the Patriots people go. Jacoby Myers, 3 years, $33 million. Sorry, that doesn't move the needle for me. You traded away Darren Waller for pick 100. You have massive holes on the interior offensive line, massive holes on the interior defensive line. Your linebackers are no good. Marcus Epps for $6 million a year. Eagles fans couldn't wait to get rid of that guy. I look at this team and they have resources available to improve. I don't think they've improved at all. And to me, they're just going to be the latest example of a Patriots way being trying to be reciprocated somewhere else, where that doesn't work if you don't have Tom Brady in his prime. Sorry.
All right, Brad, I promise to go to you first next time, but who was your biggest team loser here?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because that was, I think, the obvious answer. Just a team that just did not get better. And like you said, I mean, it's not a team where they lost a bunch of talent that we knew was going to happen. It's a team that tried to make moves and still probably did not get any better. So I think that is the easy answer that jumps out. I guess one other one I'll throw in there. They're kind of in this bucket of just losing talent. But look, I like the Kaiser White signing for Arizona, bringing a guy over with Jonathan Gannon. You bring an off-ball linebacker that can cover, that can play all three downs. But I mean, their defensive line is maybe the worst in the NFL at this point. You do retain, Kelvin Beachum and Will Hernandez. I like retaining them at decent value, but it's just tough when you bring in a new regime, and I really do think they could be the worst team in the NFL next year. So I didn't want them to spend necessarily, but they maybe could have made some small moves, and a couple, short-term type deals and kind of just sat it out altogether, which maybe is smart, but it's not going to look great in 2023.
Being able to be in a position here where, you have a new GM trying to put his fingerprints on the team, but you have a quarterback who's coming back and trying to figure out what to do. And like you said, probably should be sitting it out, but is, harder to do that than where it is. So I'll start with you on this one, Brad. So Joe can't steal the obvious answer. Who was your best value contract? We'll start with most shocking overpay contract here. And where do you go with that direction?
Yeah, I think it now is really crystallized the last couple hours of today. And look, I think he's a solid player. He's a very good blocker, and we have seen teams pay for purely blocking tight ends the last couple of years. But Josh Oliver getting a 3-year, $21 million contract from the Minnesota Vikings, when Mike Gesicki gets a 1-year, $4.5 million, and again, different players entirely, but still, we're waiting on Dalton Schultz. I doubt it's going to be a strong contract at this point. Hayden Hurst basically gets the same deal as Josh Oliver. Again, he is a good inline blocker. I like the pairing of him with TJ Hawkinson as two, different players that you can run a lot of 12 personnel, do different things up front. Hawkinson has not been the blocker. He was kind of supposed to be coming out of Iowa, but when you take a step back and look at the market now, that was a quite the overpay in Minnesota.
Joe, how about for you?
Well, because I couldn't settle on which Denver Broncos overpay to go with, whether that was Zach Allen or Mike McGlinchey or Ben Powers, because I think all three were massive overpays for average talent. I'll go with the Titans in this contract that they gave Andre Dillard, 3 years, $29 million. What? This guy's been in the league for 4 years. He started 9 games, scattered, never more than just a handful of games in any season. And the offensive line development in Philadelphia has been tremendous, right? Everyone's peaking in Philadelphia. This guy can't, he's a first-round pick, can't get on the field. What did he do to deserve nearly $10 million a season? I get it. You're betting on the upside and the traits, and a guy that hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity, and you feel like if he really can be a premium tackle, he's probably more like an $18 to $20 million a year player. You go ahead and lock him in for long at 9. It's a risk. But what are we doing here, Tennessee? What are we doing here? That's a massive overspend, in my opinion.
Spot on. You guys hit the top 2 here. I'll even throw in, McGlinchey obviously was up there. I do think I knew Juwan Taylor was going to get paid, but is it a little weird that a guy who was neck and neck with Walker Little 6 months ago now got 4 years, $80 million with $60 million of it guaranteed? Is that it? And he's never played left tackle ever, and now he's going to protect Patrick Mahomes' blindside. Is that a little weird?
Yeah, especially with what's coming on that offensive line, right? When you want to make sure you have resources to commit to Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith probably after this season, I don't know. Yeah, I don't like that one. I think they should have got him for half of that, maybe.
Yeah, not the the question with guys like Oliver and Dillard. You're genuinely asking, why would you pay that? Why? At least I knew Taylor had a good year and was going to get paid, whether it was, okay, it should have been 14 instead of 20, or should have been, he was going to get paid double digits to be a starting tackle. I didn't expect him to be the guy out there leading it when KC watches Orlando Brown go for a big chunk less. It was just out there. All right, Brad, we'll go to you on this one, and I'm going to try to be selfish. Am I being a homer that I think Jordan Poyer might be one of the best contracts so far? Is that, I didn't expect to say that coming into free agency. Am I a homer to say that should be in the running for the best contract so far?
Not a homer at all. And it's funny, I was going to quickly jump into the anecdote with Juwan Taylor where, now that I've done this a couple of years, you go to Indianapolis, you talk to people, more team people than agents is who I'm going to actually listen to and actually trust. And I'll tell you, 3 different teams were like, Juwan Taylor is going to become one of the highest paid right tackles in the NFL. And I was okay, it's interesting that he's an elite pass protector. He could get better in space and be a better blocker at the second level. And I was like, okay, I mean, I like I said, 2 AFC teams and 1 NFC team, like relatively high level personnel guys said that. And I was like, I trust your opinion more than my own. So anyway, you're not being a homer at all. Poyer, I had him at 8.5 a year, and I thought I was like, man, might be a little bit low on that one. Comes in at $6.25 million per year to stay with the same team too. So definitely on the list. There's a bunch of great ones. I already mentioned Orlando Brown, which is my answer. So I'll go even further back with Geno Smith, where look, the leverage situation there is going to play heavily in Seattle's favor, of course. He had about $17 million in career earnings through about a decade of NFL play. But still, to give him less than the franchise tag and guarantees, a smaller contract than Jimmy Garoppolo, who, maybe is a better player or has a better track record, but injuries have knocked him out of 4 of the last 6 seasons. I mean, Geno led the NFL per our charting in 20-plus yard touchdown passes this season, like actually pushing the ball down the field, had 2 rookie tackles last year, like could get better and could have better surroundings. I just think it's so hard to get a mid-tier quarterback contract in this league. Shout out Daniel Jones and others. Like, it's so hard to do, and Seattle did it. And that's why they were able to be so aggressive in getting a Draymond Jones, in getting a Julian Love, which is also one of my favorite contracts of the offseason. So, I'll go with Geno Smith.
Nice. Joe, how about you? Who stuck out as your best value so far?
I'm going with Jermaine Pratt with the Cincinnati Bengals. Nice. 3 years, $20.25 million. That's $675 million average annual value. 4-year starter, just completed his rookie deal. Got better every year and had a really good season this year. I thought he could get 10, 11, 12, and I wouldn't have blinked an eye, and he gets under 7 per. I think that was a really good deal for Cincinnati, especially considering what's coming for them. I thought that was an absolute steal.
I like it. I want to say I think I tricked myself into one of the guys, and it was I kept bringing up that, hey, when everybody thinks this is going to be everybody's value signing and he's on everybody's mock offseason list, that Paris Campbell was my guy. They're like, hey, if everybody's telling you that he's the undervalued guy coming from a bad quarterback situation, but has the profile that we think he could do better in another setting, I'm like, well, if everybody's thinking that, then he's not going to be a value. And then to have the wide receiver market seem oddly deflated, and even though, I don't think Jacoby Myers is the guy that Vegas needs in that situation, I think 11 million per year is less than I thought he was going to get, certainly from that area. So then to see Paris Campbell come at 1 year, like 4.9 million, and what I think is his cap hit's going to be, and what's there, and he has the chance to earn a little bit more. But I expected him to get 3 years, 21. I expected him to get Josh Oliver's deal, and not Paris Campbell at 1 year's under 5 million. I thought that was a sneaky deal, and good on the Giants for what they're putting together and what Shane and Dable are collecting there in New York. I thought that was a good one. Real quick here before we go to our next question, I was stopping by earlier, and I talked to this gentleman about some financial value that he saw, and he wanted to share his thoughts with us. Like, she could even park my yacht there. That's ridiculous. Oh, hello. Fancy meeting you here, prominent business owner. I was just speaking with another prominent business owner friend of mine about advertising with the Greg Thompson Sports Show. It's quite something to take a look at the demographics and the people that they touch across their vast, vast reach on all social media platforms. Hold on just a moment. I'm getting a call from another one of my prominent business owner friends. Why, yes, we were just talking about advertising with the Greg Thompson Sports Show. I know. I'm going to capitalize immediately. Thank you. All right. I hope you take this opportunity to hurry. I have some bonds to diversify. Thank you for your time. He seems to know a lot about financial value and things that you may want to look into. So I would probably listen to that advice very seriously. So now I'm going to ask you with a very straight face, Joe, to pivot immediately to our next topic. Who is your best remaining free agent on the offensive side?
This was not easy. It dried up pretty quick. Yeah. And I settled on Isaac Seumalo, the guard from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he'll probably still get 10, 11, $12 million a season. I mean, if Ben Powers got what he got, I would think Isaac Seumalo is going to challenge for a similar type deal. Potential impact starting guard, but it dried up quick, and that's what I had to settle on.
Brad, how about you?
Good choice. It is interesting. He's still out there. Interesting. Dalton Risner's still out there. I'll go with DJ Chark. I know the questions there. I know he missed a lot of time last year, but still, when you look at the draft class and the free agent class, there's not a lot of 6'4", 4'3", 440 out there on the table. And once he did get healthy in Detroit last year to close out the year when they were winning games and getting hot, a lot of it was because he was producing at a pretty high level. So, I get that it's, I'm not surprised he's still out there. But I think he stays healthy for a 17-game season, can make an impact on a new team.
Yeah, and I certainly had Dalton Schultz in my mind. I just had kind of as an automatic back to Dallas. I didn't even really view him as a free agent per se, but the fact that he's still floating out there. And then, like I said, I think I looked at some of those receivers still out there. I guess technically OBJ might be, someone to keep an eye on, but I think Seumalo is the choice for me. Brad, we'll have you lead off this one. Who's your best remaining defensive free agent?
Yeah, and we talked about the safety market and how suppressed that's been. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for me, look, he also missed a bunch of time last year, so I get it. He gets traded to Philadelphia, who always extends every player early. Do not do that. Doesn't sound like they didn't even really go into that conversation. I'm guessing there's some complications too with, do teams view him as a slot? Do teams view him now as a free safety after his year last year? Or not really free safety, but, a versatile player where it's hard to find the value for him, and is that part of the holdup? But nevertheless, I think at this point he's going to be the one of the better value signings as well. But yeah, really good player still out there.
Joe, how about you on the value side on defense?
I had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson down on my short list, but I didn't pick him. I went with a different safety, actually. Taylor Rapp. He's a guy that really interests me from the Rams. Young player, just coming off of his rookie deal. I think he's really gotten better over the last 2 seasons. He's been a good tackler. The ball production's really kind of ticked up a little bit there for him. And I just thought about intrigue and a guy that I think could come in and provide value, start, and maybe be like a pillar of a defense. And so I settled on Taylor Rapp.
I think that's a great one. Gardner-Johnson stuck out to me. That I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but that veteran pass rusher market always seems to hold on. It always seems to go into post-draft, and even guys who wouldn't mind missing the first couple of weeks of training camp, that it might not be an accident that a lot of them are out there. But I'm curious, is somebody going to throw another $10 million contract to Yannick Ngakoue? Are we going to see, some of those guys? Where do you get into that next phase of who's now accepting their role as that third down rotational guy to come in there? And there's a good handful of those names left. I saved the best for last. This week has been so weird in just the Aaron Rodgers circus of everything that's gone on. It's been, obviously I have a very, jaded, petty view of the Jets. They've been just kind of a disaster most of my life. I won't lie, the last year or two, and I think, Joe, you can kind of really reinforce this. I've been annoyed at how good Joe Douglas's drafts are. Like, he continues to pick guys that I like, and every single year it's like, man, I really like their draft class, and it keeps adding up, and all of a sudden this past year it was, wow, it's a good thing they don't have a good quarterback, because they sure have a hell of a roster, and I hope they don't get that figured out. So we'll start with you, Joe. What are your thoughts on just on the field, the Aaron Rodgers side of this? And do you think that it is something that other teams in the AFC should be concerned about?
Yeah, I do. I think Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, and I expect them to win at least 10 games. Really give the Bills and Dolphins a lot of competition in the AFC East, and certainly be a playoff team, especially with the field of 7. So I think the Jets are one of those rosters that you look at and say they're a quarterback away, and you feel like Aaron Rodgers can come in and really help them this year. But that's where you start to ask questions, is what's it like beyond this year? Are you going to give up a first-round pick plus for 1, maybe 2 seasons? And I feel like this is a little bit of desperation from Woody Johnson, the owner, who's never had a real franchise quarterback, literally. And I have questions about that too, because you go to the Giants and you could say what you want about Eli Manning, but it feels like neither one of these teams have really had consistent, stable, high-level quarterback play. And I wonder about the media market and the demands and just the lack of patience for anything to really ever come to fruition. But then also, for as much as I have admired a lot of the personnel moves that Joe Douglas has made, it feels like a make or break season for him and Robert Saleh. And so this screams desperation. Like, we have to sign up for the circus. Like, for as good as he can be, why would you sign up for what the Packers can't wait to get away from? It's been an absolute nightmare. And now you're going to absorb that while giving up assets. A little bit of a short-term thing here. I would be more interested in the long play, especially with the young talent on that roster.
So, Brad, someone who prides himself on analyzing value, managing the leverage of a market and situation, how would you like to be Brian Gutekunst right now and being the GM of a team that has an asset that another team is publicly completely pot committed to with zero backup plan available on the market? How would you approach that kind of situation?
It is a dream from a leverage standpoint, but it's in a weird way. Like, they also kind of don't have a ton of leverage themselves, because if you don't make this trade, Rodgers probably would just show up and be petty and collect his $60 million in cash and like half-ass through the season. So in a weird, like, they are in the better position here, but in a weird way, they kind of have to, give it a little bit as well. So from my perspective, like you said, why would you inherit this like nightmare situation? Well, you kind of answered your question, because they've never had a quarterback. As a Bears fan, I'll take the headaches all day long. Just give me a guy who can throw the freaking ball downfield, and we'll figure the rest out later. But yeah, no, I think it is very interesting to where I don't think it's going to drag out through the draft, because the Jets can't sit there. And like you said, they have no backup plan, but you can't sit there and not at least pretend to explore other options. Do you try to trade up from 13? Do you entertain a Lamar Jackson offer sheet, or even pretend you're trying? Like, you can't just sit there and say we are pot committed to one solution, which is a guy who has 1 foot out the door. As he said himself, he was 90% going to retire going into his darkness retreat, and I guess came out and changed his mind. Like, it's a fascinating situation. I think it does get done eventually, but both sides trying to play hardball, and I think neither is really like, what are you really kind of like holding back from? The trade value will be interesting. I don't think it's going to be a massive Russell Wilson-esque package of picks. I think just because, it could be a 1 year, $60 million proposition. Even if it doesn't include a first, I wouldn't be shocked. I think maybe one gets in there, but if none are involved, I wouldn't be surprised.
So, Joe, kind of riffing off of that piece of it, how do you think they meet? In my mind, I think they find a way to meet in the middle. I think that a lot of fans like the idea of sticking it to the Jets, and that, oh man, you have them over a barrel here, so you gotta, you gotta have multiple you need a Matthew Stafford or a Russell Wilson type return. I don't think that's what we're going to see. I don't think that we're going to see a monster return. I also think it's going to be a little more than what the Jets are comfortable with, just because of the scenario of trying to figure out, okay, what are the Packers, are they really going to dare him to show up or retire? Are they really going to just hold tight out of spite to make sure that they can maximize this? Where do you think what is the common ground you think they eventually find? I think all of us agree they're going to work this out. It's not actually going to come to that. How long are the Packers going to string it along and pretend like they might?
Well, I think the good news for all parties involved is I feel like everybody wants it to happen. Aaron Rodgers has said he wants it to happen. The Packers want to get rid of Rodgers. The Jets want Rodgers. And I think when you have all of that working for you, you're going to get something figured out. I'm sure the Packers want that pick 13, and I'm sure the Jets would love to not give up pick 13. Yeah. So it's anyone's guess what the compensation is. I mean, I'm not sure that there's an easy one-for-one case study to point to. Drew Bledsoe, I mean, what was that, pick 11 or something like that? I don't know. I think if they offer 13, you'd like to think that gets it done, but I'm sure the Jets are going to try their best to not part with that pick.
Help me. I'm just live in the moment here. I'm trying to remember there was a scenario recently where a team, everybody knew they were going to trade a pick and needed it to be able to trade it, but instead they traded down a couple times first. Did the Saints pull that off in something? What am I thinking of? There was a situation. There was a situation I'm going to think of it as soon as the show wraps, where one of the teams, they needed a first to be able to get involved in a trade. but they were up high, so they traded down once or maybe even twice, and then used it to trade for a player. Or it's going to bug me. I'll think of it.
Are you thinking of the Eagles' path to the number 2 pick when they got for Carson Wentz? Because they had to get in range. They moved up and traded like Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso, and then moved up to get close enough to get to 2, and whatever team was there didn't want to go so far back, something like that.
There might have been. Yeah. So I'm wondering that, like, is there a scenario here where the Jets are like, okay, fine, we will trade you a first, but they're going to move down from 13 to 22. And then they'll be all right, fine. Now we'll give you the first.
Yeah, and they picked up a 2 and a 3,
they recoup something. Like maybe that's a scenario. Maybe there's some other domino effect. Be like, all right, fine, we'll give you a 1, but we're not giving you.
But
13.
Who's trading up to 13 right now?
Yeah, no, that's there's so many weird variables in this, and obviously, I think the Packers. Maybe this is the spot where the Jets have a little bit to turn it back. Do you think, and I'll ask you, Brad, you this one, do you think that if the Packers try to hold the line and wait, does it start to turn against them as you get closer to the draft, in that then they would risk not getting a pick this year?
At least, right. I mean, they're picking at 15, so them and the Jets are very close at 13 and 15 as of right now. And yeah, you'd think the Jets say, okay, you know what? We're going to figure something else out at 13. Maybe we'll take a Hendon Hooker in the second round, and that'll be our hedge. Or, like that type of scenario. A Tanner McKee, a Hendon Hooker type player that they could at least pretend they feel comfortable starting in week 1. So, yeah, I do think as time goes on, like Green Bay to a degree loses a little bit of leverage. But like you said, that would be only if the Jets, like, if they had something, if they had Jacoby Brissett on their roster, like you have something. But right now, it's literally they don't even have Mike White. Mike White's a Miami Dolphin, so it's tough.
Yeah, it is a super, super weird scenario. And now, just before we wrap here, Joe, if you're a Jets fan, do you have any concern with the circus element of it? Or is it one of those, I'm a huge Eddie Murphy fan, and like back, I don't remember if it was Raw or Delirious, where he goes through and he's on the desert island coming, he gets a cracker and like, oh my God, this is the best cracker I've ever had. Is that a Ritz? And they've been so long without a quarterback. Does all the circus and the chance that he's going to freak out the first time a New York Post reporter asks him about, Woody Johnson being the heir to Big Pharma that he's so far against, and are you going to just push all that aside because they've just gone so long without a quarterback?
If I'm a New York Jets fan, I'm keenly aware that I finished last in the AFC East for the last 3 seasons and 7 of the last 8. And so I'm about ready to be done with that if I'm a Jets fan. And I had a thought earlier this week, and that thought was, I bet you there's a part of Aaron Rodgers that hates that he's going to follow the Brett Favre thing and go from the Packers to the Jets. But then I thought to myself, no, that's one petty dude. And here's reality. He'd love to go from the Packers to the Jets and take the Jets further than Brett Favre did. And so I think that's what he's going to do. You're getting a motivated Aaron Rodgers. That's a pretty doggone exciting thing. And I think that's what they'll get ultimately if it happens. So if I'm a Jets fan, that's what I'm clinging to. But I'm real nervous about everything after this year.
Yeah. So, Brad, as someone who painfully often so has watched Rodgers as close as any of the 3 of us here, what do you think the Jets are getting on the field in this version of Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, so first, the motivation's real. I think Jordan Love was a good draft pick only because it forced Rodgers to win back-to-back MVPs because he was pissed off. So, like, that is real. But also, I would say, I know this year wasn't great. I think it was underrated. His thumb and his rib cage injuries, I think, were legitimate injuries. The back-to-back MVPs, he led the NFL in yards per attempt. He was the 3rd lowest in turnover-worthy play rate. So he's creating the most positives and some of the lowest negatives in the entire NFL. And I think he's still can be that player. He gets a better receiving core than he obviously had post Devontae Adams with Garrett Wilson and all his friends that he's forcing the Jets to sign, like Allen Lazard and whoever now. So, no, I think it's going to be really good. I think this is a legit roster. If they can get healthy with Mekhi Becton, probably more importantly with Elijah Vera Tucker, I think they're a legit contender, at least in the division. I know you guys are Bills fans. Like, I wouldn't want to look. I've been watching them beat my team for 20 years in a row. I do not wish that on you guys in Buffalo at all.
Yeah, I mean, for I know many of the folks listening tonight are Bills fans, and I'm not all of a sudden afraid of them and in the now they're way better than the Bills, but obviously they go from a definitive fourth in the division to now. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to sweep the Jets. Like they can absolutely win. They absolutely are capable of making a run of the division, and now it's one more threat. It would be in my mind the same idea as Miami last year. They're like, hey, yeah, do I still feel pretty good about this? But do we have to take them very seriously? And now all of a sudden it's not. I loved it when I thought we had the Tom Brady route of 6-0 in the division every year, and we were just going to waltz through, unchallenged. And now, now it seems like they're going to be pretty freaking good. We might have 3 playoff teams in the division, and I think that it's okay to be frustrated with that. It does. Very likely this is a short-term blip, and that maybe we can hope that the cap usage and the trade compensation can short circuit their long-term build here by the time they now need to pay some of that talent that we're talking about, and will then need a quarterback by at minimum 2025 if not 2024. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to be a pain and a force to be reckoned with in 2023, which is, a real shame, honestly. So Brad, I didn't put on the rundown here, but I want to give you a chance to kind of brag on yourself a little bit. Give us one or two of the contracts you were most proud of your projection for that you really hit, and maybe one that has you scratching your head the most of like, man, I got to go back and do some homework on next year.
I mean, there were a handful of good ones. I think, honestly, sometimes hitting the mid-tier feels better than hitting the top tier. Like, who's going to get paid, right? But I feel like a guy like Cole Holcomb, like I tried to do a ton of film study on the off-ball linebackers. It was a very deep class, and that can kind of skew the market a little bit. And I thought he was underrated. Got hurt last year, but an underrated, legit 3-down player that I thought if he stayed healthy in Washington could have gotten like $8-9 million a year. I put it right at 3 years, 18. It's exactly what he signed for. So that one felt good because I was way off on TJ Edwards and a bunch of other guys. Other ones that were just way off. I mean, Gesicki, like I had him at like 3 years, 33. So I didn't think he was going to like top the market or anything, but a 1 year, $4.5 million flyer with incentives was certainly not what I saw coming from Mike Gesicki. I know he didn't get used last year at all, but I figured a team would come in and say, hey, we're going to use him as a flex tight end, as a move tight end, basically as a big slot receiver, a different role for him, and that he would do okay. I can't believe that's all he got.
So, and let the folks know any more, what do you switch into in this second wave of free agency and other work that you have coming up?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So we're still covering everything, grading every single deal, grading the teams, and then now we have our best remaining free agents. So I was cheating for some of the questions. We have a list there of who are the guys still out there who could be a good fit for your team. We are projecting kind of some team fits based on our alignment data and scheme data and things like that. So anything to do with that, and then of course the draft is around the corner now. I'll probably do a mock draft now, post free agency. I like to wait until the signings and cheat a little bit. I know you guys probably are diving into those waters a little bit earlier. All that over at PFF coming out in the near future.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Joe, how about you? I know obviously you did your announcement for Locked On NFL. So help me out. Locked On
NFL Scouting.
NFL Scouting. Thank you. I'm already subscribed. And excited.
Yes.
But help us out with what that transition is going to be like as you guys look there and what the folks can expect. I assume everyone listening is already a huge passionate fan of Locked On Bills, but just in case they're not, let them know what you have coming up.
Yeah, that's my my deal now. Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting, 2 daily podcasts for you to consume. One, obviously, focus on the Buffalo Bills. The other one, team building across the NFL. We're looking at everything from how to build a sustainable winning football team and the whys behind the decisions. And we had some good stuff in our first few episodes this week, and looking forward to being on that very consistent daily grind moving forward.
And I assume step number 1 is pay 40-year-old quarterback $60 million.
That's not that we don't, but the Jets, right? With all the circumstances, that's why you can get yourself there. But obviously the Houston Texans aren't lining up to do that.
Yeah. So obviously, make sure you're checking these guys out. I'll have links to both of their work here in the list. I will say, I know I get a lot of praise from Bills fans for my salary cap knowledge. Joe has had me on his show to be able to help out there. You guys have to follow Brad. He's one of the best in the business. He's the guy I go to in my DMs to double check on things and to ask questions to confirm what's there. I know for anyone who isn't familiar, he came up working with, Jason and helping build up everything over at overthecap.com. Obviously, another site that I utilize greatly, but Brad's free agent rankings and everything over there at PFF have been a great resource, so make sure you're checking that out. Huge fan of Joe and everything that he has going on at Locked On, and very proud and excited to see what he does as he focuses all of his attention there. But appreciate you both. It's been a lot of fun tonight, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, thank you.
Thanks much for having me. Big fans of you guys as well.
Awesome. Really excited to have those guys on tonight. It was a ton of fun to be able to kind of go through and talk through, my passion is always going to be football, and this show has given me an outlet to, talk about other things and other fun items going on, throughout the world of sports. But that was still what everybody was focused on this week, is where those splashes were happening, where those signings were happening, who was making their football team better, and all the different pieces that are going on. So really appreciate those guys' time. A couple things we want to go over. I know right as the show took off here, it looks like we had our second ever 16-1 upset, and Fairleigh Dickinson took down Purdue in that monster Zach Edey. So for anyone who is going against me in the Greg Thompson Sports Show bracket challenge, I'm pretty sure that Purdue loss really hurt my bracket. I don't know if I had them in the championship game, but I'm real sure I had them in the Final Four. So that's not good for your bracket if your Final Four team gets knocked out in the opening round. I'm pretty sure I had Arizona going decent ways too there. So I did, follow the advice from Colin last week, and I was able to avoid Virginia, but those two hurt. Arizona and now Purdue tonight. That one hurts real bad. So hopefully you guys had a chance to get in there. We had a ton of fun advertising that, a bunch of really cool prizes. We had a really good turnout for it. So appreciate everybody who took the time to show their screenshot of them subscribing to the new show, retweeting the contest, and sharing everything that was going on there. That was a ton of fun. We've got a couple things that we're going to go through here. First, we Uncle Dickie was out there having fun watching the tournament here this today. So we didn't have a chance to have him on, but we still want to share a little bit of some of the moves that he had. Had a couple different things going for some advertised parlays, building up some of the plays that, going for some of the player parlays that he went through. And one of the one game parlays here, talking about who they built up with Kent State versus Indiana, was one that he put together here for tonight that you can take a look at. Malik Jacobs, Race Thompson, Sincere Carey, each of those guys to be able to put together a little bit here. And then a big game from Trace Jackson Davis. So, I know a lot of big Indiana fans out there. So that's one that you can take a look at. Make sure you're looking at the pieces that are out there. And I will say, producer Chris here pointing out, Prominent Business Owner 69 was one of the first entries into the contest, and I was so impressed that they came up with that name for my ridiculous infomercial. And so I was disappointed to see that they didn't fill it out here. I thought there was certainly a little bit more that we could have done there. Next, we're going to jump in and have a little bit of fun, see if I can finally get one. I haven't gotten one yet. So we're going to try Greg Doesn't Know. We're going to try a little bit of trivia, see if we can get this one figured out here. Who has the record for the most tournament points in their career? Okay, so Oscar Robertson, Elvin Hayes, Christian Laettner, Danny Manning. So Danny and the Miracles. Obviously, Christian Laettner was around forever, but back then, they scored a ton of points back then. This is tough. You got multiple choice. This ain't no charity. Suck it up, Buttercup. I appreciate it. Oh, all right. Let's go back and take a look one time here. So I know Danny Manning had one of the best tournament runs. God, Laettner played a prominent role, was there for so long, and was a big scorer, but maybe not like it wasn't always Phil, and he wasn't, Pete Maravich or anything like that. Oscar Robertson, I think Chris is trying to trick me. I can't tell if Elvin Hayes is so sneaky that it's put there to trick me into that. I want to say Christian Laettner, but All right, I'm going to say officially Elvin Hayes. It is Christian Laettner. I'm so mad. Oh, I knew that was the right answer. I'm out tricking myself. I'm so mad at myself. I hate this game. All right. Who has the highest scoring point total in a single tournament game? All right. So we put Elvin Hayes in there again to mess with me. The Admiral's awesome. David Robinson, Bill Bradley, Austin Carr is. So I know there is some tidbit about Austin Carr scoring a bunch of points, maybe like it was 51 or so, like a big chunk of points in a tournament game. Bill Bradley's there. All right. It's not my hint is it's not Bill Walton. That's very helpful. Thank you very, very much, Chris. Let me look at it again. All right. So the same thing. He put Elvin Hayes in there twice because he's sneaky. I'm gonna stick with my gut. There's something about Austin Carr in tournament history. I'm gonna go with Austin Carr. Yeah, 61 points. University of Ohio. That's right.
That's right. Who do you think you are? I am. Get it right.
Who do you think you are? I am. I've been wanting to play that video this entire time. That's really like half the reason that I wanted there to be Greg Doesn't Know contest was just so I could play that video. So Austin Carr here with a killer run. Wow. 3 of the top 5 scoring games in tournament history and 5 of the top 12 in that 2-year run when Austin Carr was at Notre Dame, and then was the number 1 overall pick to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he actually, fun side note, he's the announcer for the Cavaliers. He's beloved here in Cleveland, and has a bunch of fun kind of sayings that he does. You know, he has a lot of really over the top reactions to things. One, whenever anybody shoots a 3-pointer, it's always deep in the right, and he's had to change his saying multiple times because the name of the arena changes all the time. But he also does one where every time there's a block shot, he shouts, "Get that weak stuff out of here." And so my family, we have season tickets for the Cavs and a package that we go down for multiple games. And he was there for Halloween as the kids were going around, and my wife has a video of him telling our daughter Ashley to get that weak stuff out of here. And it's one of our favorite videos that we have to be able to play as Austin Carr telling Ashley to get that weak stuff out of here. So, you know, a ton of fun so far this week. We wouldn't be able to wrap things up without our amazing worst poll. We've had a really good run here. It's been a ton of fun to be able to go through. And, you know, last week we were a little bit nervous that the doesn't return their shopping cart was going to just be an undefeated opponent and no one would be able to challenge it. But in their very first matchup, we actually had a pretty tight vote in that they barely took down the one-upper storyteller. I think people really had that in the back of their minds that they hate that guy who has to always one-up your story and always has one thing crazier or one thing worse. So I thought maybe this week that they'd be able to do it, that, you know, when you hold the door open for someone and they don't say thank you, that was such a common thing that I thought, you know, maybe it would be able to take it down, but the vote really ran away with it. 7,000 votes, and it was 58-41 here. They really, you know, handled it. That doesn't return their shopping cart really, you know, what ran away with this one. Jason's here saying thank you after someone holds the door is like waving when someone lets you into traffic. Also a good one that was brought up earlier. It's kind, it's polite, it should be standard, but it's more of a nice gesture, but should not be expected. Shopping cart negligence is just such unnecessary and lazy rudeness. Okay. I Am Legend, who I think was in the chat here tonight. Ron, our guy from the Cover One Slack channel, always there and a big supporter of us. Whenever I hold the door for someone and they don't say anything, I act like they did in a super nice voice and say, "Oh, you're very welcome, ma'am." Some ignore, others apologize for not thinking, and then some actually say to me, "I didn't say anything," and I respond, "I know." I like that. Really well played by Ron there. I like that. Here, some people brought this in, and this has been brought up before. There is like a formal theory that returning the shopping cart is the like it says here, the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of being a member of society. Because on the one side, no one's watching. No one's going to hold you accountable for it. No one's going to yell at you or get you in trouble. There will be no repercussions for not returning your shopping cart. Also, if you do return your shopping cart, you're not going to get a reward. No one's going to pat you on the back. No one's going to, praise you for doing the right thing and, making sure that you took the cart back and did what you were supposed to do. It's purely on you, and that those are good elements on both sides of it. Can you do the right thing when you're not going to get praised and when there's really no repercussions to not doing the right thing? That's a pretty good litmus test for, can you be a productive, functioning member of society? So I really like that Buffalo fan 199 took the time to submit that theory and show us where that actually came from. Here Dave L saying, ooh, that's tough. Usually cart guy does it when someone isn't looking. The no thank you guy does it right in your face. That is a good point here. And Daniel saying, not returning the cart, in addition to being a total dick move, can cause actual physical damage to people and property. You're right. It actually can. Here Silvano saying thank you takes zero effort and should be automatic. There's no excuse for not saying thank you. I hate the person who leaves the cart in the parking spot, but it's not the worst thing. There could be reasons for abandoning the cart. I vote doesn't say thank you. I think it's a good point here. And Lauren, our producer, fully endorses that response, that saying thank you really should get should have gotten more votes than what it did. So here, the favorite to face off next week and to be able to try to take down doesn't return the shopping cart guy is, I'm absolutely nominating the person at a group dinner who demands everyone pay based on the percentage of each shared item they ate. Not talking one person clearly housed something themselves, but you had 2 mozzarella sticks and I only had 1. That's a horrible person. Like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you had 3 different scoops of that salad, so you should probably pay. Oh, that's a terrible person. The hardest part for me is figuring out the best way to describe that and to put it into the vote. I'm going to have to come up with the right language to be able to do that. Because, yeah, here, Elizabeth chiming in, that person is the worst. Be like, no. You definitely had 2 spring rolls and I only got 1 spring roll, and that's not acceptable here. So that's going to be a good one. We're going to be able to have some fun taking that down. That's the worst polls have been a really fun run here for us, and we appreciate it. The chat was awesome tonight. You guys were fantastic. Again, I say this every week. It really helped. Please take a moment when you wrap this up, leave a comment, let us know your favorite segment from the show. Let us know what you enjoyed about Joe and Brad. Those guys are awesome guests to be able to jump on here and help us out. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. I've been looking for some of the ratings. We've had a lot of people jumping in, give us ratings. They won't let me look at anything on Spotify, which is annoying, but I'll be going through this week, looking at Google Podcasts and iTunes and some of the different areas there to be able to get the reviews off of there. So if you take the time to get a review, I'm going to read some of those on the show next week. But really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. This has been a ton of fun to be able to, have a show like this and have an outlet to have other guests on and to talk about things outside just the Buffalo Bills, even though I still love the Bills more than anything else. This is a really fun outlet to be able to get together. Huge thank you to our producers, Lauren and Chris, have done an awesome job being able to help me out, looking for lots of fun, different things and getting things set up for the show. So appreciate you guys all very, very much. This has been a ton of fun. And as always, we will let our man, Daniel Craig, take us into,
ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
And that'll do it. Try to be good to each other.